A lot of times people think that someone has it all together. And what I love about platforms like this is just the rawness and realness to say that we don't have it all together. Like no one has it all together, first of all. But I think in the veteran world, we often forget that. So many people are living this life that maybe looks great from the outside. We're veterans, a lot of us. I can't speak for everyone, but we're really good at making things look really great. And I don't know about you guys who are listening, but me, I've hit this kind of point in my life where I'm like at this crossroads where I'm like, I really am sick of just feeling like we're going through the motions every single day. And I don't necessarily want to look 10 years into the future and say, yeah, this is my ultimate goal and let's reverse engineer. Cause like to me, that adds a lot of mental stress. But I do want to figure out what's going to get me to the next step. Like what's going to make me really, really happy and passionate every single day when I wake up.
Welcome to Your Story Doesn't End Here, the mental health podcast of military and veterans who refuse to be silenced. I'm your host, Rachel, and my mission with this podcast is to be a voice for those who don't have a voice, bring awareness to mental health issues, provide value and solutions, and to change the culture when it comes to mental health within the DoD organizations.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Your Story Doesn't End Here. This is Rachel, and I am doing probably the last solo episode of 2024. Don't know yet. For those of you who have been following for a while, you know that I don't really plan like some podcasters do. I really just kind of go with the flow, and that's worked really well for me for 3 years. I think a couple months ago, I announced that I hit my 3-year anniversary of the podcast in September, and that was a lie. It turns out it's November. I forgot because I think I started the journey in September and I didn't actually fully launch till November. Only figured that out because of my Facebook memories the other day. Shout out to Facebook memories. They helped me jog a lot of the memories that I don't remember in my own head. So anyway, that being said, I thought I would just kind of do a bit of a life update with me, where I'm at, and what the next steps for the podcast are, and kind of what my vision is for 2025, and share that with you. And we'll just kind of see where the conversation goes from there, as usual. So, Your Story Doesn't End Here, like I just said, has been operating for 3 years, and my passion in the realm of military mental health has not wavered. I will say that I experienced a lot of burnout towards the end of this year. And one thing about me is that I will allow things to pile on and pile on and pile on in my life. And it's a very unhealthy thing, I would say, to do, but it is just kind of the way that I'm wired. And I've very much been an all or nothing kind of person for a really long time in my life. And the thing about us people who are all or nothing people is that from like the outside looking in, it looks like we are just these go-getters who are just constantly getting shit done and these like fierce action takers. I mean, it just looks really, really good. I used to suffer from really, really bad anxiety, and I still deal with it occasionally now and then. Medication helped me get past a lot of the physical symptoms of that. But I would say that I never really learned quite how to balance things in my life. And that's something I still really, really struggle with. And the thing about when I was working in the Navy is that because it kind of forced me into some kind of structure, I never really had to deal with that. It was when I got out of the Navy and then I'm faced with the real world and having to organize and figure out my own life is when I had to sit down and have this honest conversation of, okay, Rachel, what are we going to do next? Like what does life look like? And it's so much deeper than just the career or doing things that you love here and there. I think for me, balance is like the whole human being, right? Like, what life do I live that makes me feel like I'm not in survival mode? Because I, from a nervous system standpoint, have felt like I've been in survival mode for years. And I want to caveat that by saying it's not that I'm constantly in this like shocked state of anxiety and I feel panicky all the time. I think it's just that if I look back and I reflect on the actions and what I do in my life, it comes from the state of survival and cortisol induced rather than this like clear headed state of okay, I'm making this decision very intentionally because I know what I want to do next. And so anyway, I was in this peer support training a few weeks ago with an organization called Growing Veterans. And we were really talking about like what intentional means. And so I think this is a really appropriate conversation to have as we head into the new year, because a lot of people are going to start talking about intentions and resolutions and, whatever word makes you feel the best, right? Like not everyone likes to use the word resolution anymore, but a lot of people, especially in the coaching industry, love to talk about being intentional, not just with New Year's, but every day being intentional, every quarter, whatever have you. And I've heard this word floating around so much of be intentional, look 5 years into the future, and then from there reverse engineer it. And that's never really quite worked for me, because with that all or nothing mentality where it's like, my all or nothing mentality is if I'm going to give it my all, well, yeah, I'm going to shoot to be a billionaire and have all these things and travel the world and like live this lavish lifestyle. But then as I kind of like scale back and dial back, I'm like, is that really what I want though? Or is that just kind of like what looks cool? Would I hit that point and not actually be happy? Like at my core, what do I really want? And I really, really struggle with that. I don't think that's something I fully figured out yet. I think there's a lot to the world that I haven't even really explored or know about to even say like, yeah, my ideal life looks like this. And I get it. That's constantly changing for us as people in general, but it was very, very hard for me to do that exercise. And in that, if I don't really fully know what I want with my life, how can I be intentional? Like, what does being intentional actually mean? Because yeah, I could watch a million YouTube videos as I have, a million morning routines as I have, read personal development books as I have, and try to mimic all these different people's lifestyles because that looks like it'd be really good to me, but it's not at the end of the day. And all or nothing mentality tells me if I can't do it all, then I might as well do nothing and just kind of rot in bed all day. And so that's kind of the point that I've reached in my life over the last couple of months. And you wouldn't know that from the outside looking in, because like I said, I'm not a huge like social media poster about my life, but there's a lot of people that see me here and there in my local community or interact with me. And a lot of times people think that someone has it all together. And what I love about platforms like this is just the rawness and realness to say that we don't have it all together. Like no one has it all together, first of all. But I think in the veteran world, we often forget that. So many people are living this life that maybe looks great from the outside. We're as veterans, a lot of us, I can't speak for everyone, but we're really good at making things look really great. And I don't know about you guys who are listening, but me, I've hit this kind of point in my life where I'm like at this crossroads where I'm like, I really am sick of just feeling like we're going through the motions every single day. And I don't necessarily want to look 10 years into the future and say, yeah, this is my ultimate goal and let's reverse engineer. Cause like to me, that adds a lot of mental stress. But I do want to figure out what's going to get me to the next step. Like what's going to make me really, really happy and passionate every single day when I wake up. And maybe that won't be that motivation and fuel to make me be that person like tomorrow where I'm waking up at 5 a.m. doing the extensive morning routine and my life's completely together. But I had to go back in my own mind and think like, what's next, Rachel? How do we get out of this rut that we're in? And I feel like I've really been in this rut for some time. And the first kind of step in my brain was, okay, well, it's really hard to do things on my own. And I'm terrible at asking for help, but coaching has been both the worst thing and the best thing in my life, depending on who I've worked with. And I've had some really, really wonderful coaches in the past that were like huge catalysts in my journey when life looked really good for me a few years ago, before I really felt like I hit that like weird spot that kind of led up to where I am now emotionally. I'll share a little bit about my coaching journeys so you understand what I mean by that. But the very first coach that I ever worked with was a coach that worked with me on like body empowerment and body issues. And it was such a non-pressured coaching experience that I really, really loved. when I grew up, my sports coaches were always like really, really pushy and like, I want the best for you and yelling and this and that. And I really liked that at that point in my life. But I've hit this point in my life over the last couple of years where like the things that are like deeply rooted in me, trauma, whatever, like you can't just yell it out of me or like push it out of me. Like I need support more than I need someone like really, really hardcore pushing me. And so what I loved is that if something wasn't working, we went back to the drawing board and we tried something else. And if something else wasn't working, we went back to the drawing board and tried something else. When it came to food and trying to heal my relationship with food, it wasn't okay. Well, like the nutritionist that I spoke to when I was active duty told me, look at the plate, like what is it, myplate.gov or something, and like get your food portions and your food groups. And I'm like, cool. Like it sounds a lot simpler than it is, but it's really hard for me to do that. And so, this coach that I worked with was like, eat as many vegetables as you want, but then let's work on limiting the other things. And so that way I am almost replacing the negative with something that is going to fill me up and nourish my body. So that's one example. The second coach that I worked with that I really loved was a little bit more pushy, but also got me to a really, really good place. And it's because I was ready for that next step in my journey. I didn't do coaching for a number of years after that. And then I started trying to get with these like, or work with these like higher level coaches, quote unquote. And what I noticed was a huge difference in my journey is anytime I worked with a female coach, it really resonated with me. Anytime I worked with a male coach, for some reason, it was just not a great experience. And I know this isn't everyone's experience, but for me, like the male coaches tended to be pushier, tended to focus more on like the profit and the financial gain. And we're just motivated, what felt like more by money and whatever else. I don't know, but just very rude. I mean, I had a coach that I was going to work with on motivational speaking that just sent me like horrible things via text message because I had said, hey, this isn't a good fit. You're not coaching me. You're just asking for more money constantly. And this just isn't going to work. And so in that, I learned that I really love the support of coaches. However, making sure that a coach is the right fit for me is very, very important. And what does the right fit look like? Well, it's someone that can maybe relate to my life in some way, shape, or form. Like maybe going and speaking with a male coach isn't the best fit because I'm not a male and I can't relate to that. Maybe going and talking to the single female who travels the world all the time and has never had kids is the best fit because I can't relate to that. And it's not always that niche, right? Like the coach that I'm actually working with currently is that very first coach that I worked with in the body empowerment stage, and her business has evolved. But I had such a good experience in the past, and I've continued to follow her journey. And so I decided to take that leap and get support again. And so, before I even took the coaching leap to get support again, I tried to go back to the VA and get mental health support, which I'm still waiting on. For some reason, the first time I reached out to the VA for mental health support, they were like really quick to get me sifted into the community care sector. And for some reason, this time I'm being told it's going to take months. And I just knew that I was at a point where like I couldn't just keep waiting for something. And I know this is super relatable in the veteran community. And the shitty thing about coaching is that, it's not covered by insurance. And so it is something that has to be paid for out of pocket. Thankfully, the coach I'm working with now isn't like thousands and thousands of dollars like some of these coaches that have tried to like pitch me and sell me on their programs. And I think that huge thing for me right now is just a support system of some sort. And a support system isn't always going to be the people that are closest to you. In fact, for me, it's usually been the people that can kind of come in with the outside perspective, the people that I'm not around every single day, because I don't always want to share my deepest, darkest things or ask for support from the people that are closest to me. I want that relationship to remain the way that relationship is. I don't mind sharing about my mental health, but there's just kind of different levels of support and relationships for me. And so coach is the first step in the next step of Rachel's journey. The next thing that I was really looking at introspectively was, what do I want my career aspirations to look like? What do I want every day to look like? And so, I'm not going to get into like the weeds of like my personal avatar and like what I want myself to look like. But I will say that I have been toying around with the idea of what I want to do with this podcast for a really long time, and this platform that I have in military mental health. And I think I've even like shared things in the past with like things that I was working on and things that I was launching. And the thing is that this has been such a passion project of mine that trying to monetize this platform has never felt right. And so that's been like a very internal struggle battle of mine is, a lot of people, when you talk about podcasting, they're asking, how many downloads do you have? Are you monetizing? And, all these questions. And I'm like, well, I have my 30 to 40 people that listen every time an episode drops. Shout out to all you guys. I love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting throughout the years, because honestly, it makes my soul happy when I log into my Spotify for Podcasters account and I see that 30 people have listened to my episode. And for a lot of podcasters, that's not a lot. Like, people want millions of downloads. But for me, I'm like, man, I'm so grateful that I have 30 to 40 people that consistently listen to these episodes when they drop. Like, I don't even really listen to podcasts like that. And so your support honestly truly means the world to me. And I'm so, so grateful for that. But I do want to be able to do more in the military mental health community. And so 2025, I'm super, super excited to be launching the nonprofit version of Your Story Doesn't End Here, which is going to still encompass the podcast. The goal is to allow me to broaden the reach of the podcast. I would love to get some more guests on the platform, do some really cool in-person interviews to be able to reach military and veterans where most organizations normally wouldn't reach us. And, I'm talking about the people who are in more rural communities, smaller bases. When I look at like places like Naval Air Station Whidbey Island, you're not getting a lot of like huge names that come out here because it's more expensive to come out to a location like this than it would be to just go to like a JBLM or a Naval Station Everett or Bremerton, because they're just closer to the airport, the major airport, and it's not a 2-hour drive. And so I think about all the other places around the US and really around the globe where there are service members, there are veterans who are not being reached and whose mental health is really suffering because they're not close enough to like the big hubs. And so to be able to reach people like that and to be able to support other nonprofits that are doing the work as well. I mean, I think that to me is like the ultimate vision of what I would love to see this platform turn into. Because when I started Your Story Doesn't End Here, the goal was really to change the culture when it comes to mental health within the DoD organizations. You hear it every time the podcast plays in my intro. But, to be heard, I have to continue to be loud. And sometimes that means showing up to the spaces and being heard in front of the people that need to hear my voice. And so going nonprofit allows me to do that. I've actually toyed around with this idea for probably a year. I didn't want to do it because I know nothing about nonprofit, and B, it's kind of scary jumping into something like that. Leah Stiles, who did the episode with me about her nonprofit Sea Waves, she was my roomie when I was at the Military Influencers Conference, and she was the one who was like so encouraging to me. She's like, you should do nonprofit. Like, she told me that I'd make a good CEO. And like, Leah, if you're listening to this, I appreciate you, because sometimes hearing the right words from the right person is what is that catalyst that pushes us to make that leap that we've been on the edge about for a really long time. But someone believing in you is also huge in really anyone's life. And so, kind of sidebarring a little bit here, I love going out of my way every once in a while to tell someone something that I know is going to potentially be that thing that's going to like resonate with them for the rest of their life. I remember when I was doing leadership Whidbey last year, there was an individual in the class who just like had the most amazing poetic voice, speaking with so much like perfection and like in a way that draws you in. And I remember telling her, like, listen, your voice is incredible. Like, you should do spoken word poetry, and it stuck with her because she kept telling me even for over the next couple of months, like, hey, thank you for telling me that. And so all these times in our lives when we have opportunities to tell someone a compliment, you never know, that could change someone's life, the entire trajectory of it. And so anyway, that's where I am leaning with the podcast and the platform right now. And it's what I've been working on. I do have a crowdfunding campaign going for startup costs, because that's the other thing that was kind of a bit of a hindrance, is that starting a nonprofit corporation does cost money. So I can post that link in the show notes for anyone that wants to support in that capacity. And of course, those funds go totally towards supporting military mental health and getting that platform up and running so that we can go 501c3 and expand the impact of Your Story Doesn't End Here. And so that will be my baby for 2025 is the plan. Yeah, that's really it. I think so I guess my brain's kind of going all over the place as it normally does. I've said in the past, if you followed every episode, a couple of things that I'm working on. And I don't remember if I said on the podcast that I have been really focusing on like pushing aside the things that are extra. I don't want to use the word clutter because they're very important, but just extra in my life, and trying to hone in my focus on like one thing. And it's so hard for my brain to focus on one thing. And so, I'm working on veterans reintegration in my community, establishing a military affairs committee under the chamber in my community, among other things. And I'm the president of my homeowners association. I'm a mom to almost two kids, run businesses, help run a business, currently work for a nonprofit. And there's just so many things in my life that was just creating so much brain clutter for me. And it's so hard to be able to say no to things that feel like they're important to me. I'm still technically also a member of Rotary Club and attending all these meetings and networking and all these things constantly filling my schedule. And I think a lot of that was because I felt that successful people have constant things in their schedules, and they do, don't get me wrong, but sometimes we hit a point in life where things just aren't resonating. They're creating more burnout than they're helping, and we just need a break. And one of the things that my coach is having me do that I really love, and it's probably going to be really uncomfortable, but I love that it's a task for me, is just spending one day completely off of social media, minimal digital distractions. And I remember when I was active duty and I would go on detachments and I would intentionally find ways to not be glued to my phone because I got so sick of my phone so fast when I was on the other side of the world and everyone was sleeping or working when I had time to talk. And finding time to fill, or finding things to fill that space with something that made me better, reading a book, working out, meditating. I just haven't done that in a really long time. And so I'm really excited to shift my focus to something for me and then other things for me, because it's been a while. I think I've spent so much of the last couple of years of my life doing things for other people, which I will always continue to do because it's what I love to do. But I need to take some space for me. And if you can relate to that and you're in this space in your life where you're like, man, I too am doing so many things for other people and I need to take space for me and I don't know how to do it. Like, I just want to acknowledge that it's really hard to do, because in that, sometimes you're going to have people reaching out to you and reaching out to you and reaching out to you and like wanting so much of your attention and space. And like for me, I literally just got to a point where I just stopped responding to some messages. I stopped responding to some phone calls. I didn't answer them. I stopped responding to some emails, and I had to just kind of pick and choose where I want to focus my energy in my life. And the thing is people will understand at the end of the day. If that's what you need to get through to the next step in your journey, then that's okay. I listened to a podcast one time where this guy, I don't remember which podcast, I feel like it was an impact theory podcast, but this guy was like, I was getting ready to leap into like the next higher level of myself part of life. And he reached out to everyone in his life and was like, listen, like, you're not going to hear from me for a while because I'm focusing on me. And I remember like feeling physical discomfort when I heard that, because I'm like, man, that is intense to be able to reach out to people and say, listen, mom, listen, dad, listen, grandma, like, you're not going to hear from me because I'm working on me. I didn't do that. because I don't think I ever like had a point where I fully was like, all right, as of today, I'm working on me and everyone else can fuck off. Like, that's not what my thought process was. But I think being unapologetic about focusing on you and then knowing that people will understand at the end of the day if you needed that for you, if they truly care in your life, was really, really healing and powerful for me. But then also working through that internal discomfort of like not feeling like I needed to drop everything for everyone else, especially when I was in the middle of doing something for me or like focusing on a task that I needed to get done to like offload the mental clutter that I had. So hopefully that makes sense. But I would say I'm in a very like transformative place in my life right now. I think I have been for some time now, but it's something completely new for me. And I think every veteran kind of goes on this journey to an extent where we're just kind of like discovering the person that we are becoming, not rediscovering who we are, not going back to anything, but discovering this person that we are becoming. And the goal at the end is to live this incredible, fulfilled life where every day doesn't feel like a burden, like a mental burden. And I think we all deserve that as human beings because life's too short to not live every day like it's your fullest. Very cliche thing to say, I think, but it's very true. And so, anyway, I don't know what date this episode is going to release because, like I said, I don't really plan like that, but this may potentially be the last episode of 2024. So, if it is, I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful holiday season, whichever holiday it is that you celebrate. I hope you have a wonderful new year. And I hope that you going into 2025 and even for the end of 2024, start working towards your best life as well, because you deserve that too. And even if it's just taking one step, hiring a coach, doing something different, turning off your phone and shutting off the world for a bit, doing something completely off the handle that you normally wouldn't do, taking a vacation. I see some of my friends that are like going on solo trips and trying new things. And I just think it's so incredible when people step out of their comfort zone or, just try something different that is for them and fills their soul up and shares that with the world or doesn't share it with the world. As long as you're doing it for you, that's what matters. So have a safe, happy, and healthy new year and a holiday season. And thank you again for supporting the podcast for another year in 2024. I'm so looking forward to what the platform brings heading into 2025 and for the next year. We are not going anywhere anytime soon. I hope you continue to listen in, support, share the platform, rate and review if you have not. Feel free to support the crowdfunding campaign or the nonprofit once it launches. I will let you guys know. And we will see you guys next week.
Thank you for taking the time to listen in today. With your support, we are able to increase awareness of the mental health issues affecting service members and veterans today with the goal of creating positive change. If you got value from this episode, please take 30 seconds to subscribe and share this episode within your own network. Until next time, remember, your story matters, your mental health matters, and your story doesn't end here.